Hey, welcome back. This is the second part in our series where we're looking at the PolyEffects Beebo. On the first episode, we looked at using Beebo as essentially a condensed pedal board all in one, which is kind of the purpose, I think, of most multi-effects pedals. But I think Beebo, and I don't have a Zoya, but Zoya also, stand out from multi-effects pedals because of their modularity. Or just their creative potential. So today, instead of using Beebo as a pedal board or a traditional multi-effects pedal, we're going to use Beebo to clone a pedal that already exists, a pedal that I don't have. We're going to use it to clone the Keeley Dark Side, which is a pedal that's meant to give you some of the guitar tones found on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. But yeah, we're going to try to do all of that in Beebo. So yeah, let's get to it. I've got it bypassed right now, so you can hear my clean tone, which is just running straight into Ableton. I have a limiter on it. I would recommend always using a limiter or some kind of external device to control the volume with Beebo because it can get so loud with feedback and bit mangling and all of that kind of stuff. If we look at the Keeley Dark Side pedal, it's composed of two different sections. You have your fuzz section and you have a modulation section. So first we're going to start with a fuzz. The best way, as I showed you on the last Beebo video, the best way to get a fuzz is to use the bit mangle. And then you'll notice that the Keeley also has a filter on the fuzz. So we're just going to put a low pass filter. Get the filter. We're going to use the K Korg, totally unrelated to Korg. Let's see what we got right here. What we're going to do now to make this a little fuzzier is we're going to run our same input signal into the modulator as well as the carrier. Got a little bit of breakup now in our signal. We don't want it to be too loud. Okay, and then we're gonna just increase our cutoff a little bit and give it a touch of resonance. So that's sounding pretty good. We're not going to go crazy with fuzz. You can if you want to, but I don't think that most of Gilmour's playing, at least not on Dark Side of the Moon, is very crazy fuzzy. So this is plenty enough, just kind of a signal boost with just a little bit of breakup. So the second part of this pedal is our modulation side. And the modulation side on this pedal is broken up into three different sections. We have the phase and Univibe section, we have a delay section, and then a flanger and a rotary section. And kind of this key feature of this pedal is when you pick the phase or Univibe or the flanger rotary sections, you can blend between those two effects to get an effect somewhere in between. And we can do that really, really easily on Beebo. So let's start with flanger and rotary. If we go to effects, we go to F, we have a flanger. And if we go to effect and R, we've got a rotary. So we don't have to make those. We don't have to do anything special with those. Those are already ready to go. And we're going to run out from our fuzz filter. And so to blend the flanger and the rotary, we need a wet and dry. So we're going to run the rotary and the flanger into separate channels of the wet and dry. And then we're going to copy the wet and dry. And then we're going to run our fuzz filtered sound into the dry and our flanger filter into the wet. And then we're going to disconnect this from the output, so it's all going to the wet dry, and then we're going to connect the wet dry to the output. That sounds like a lot, but bear with me. Right now, everything's 50-50. So the rotary and the flanger are being blended equally, and the fuzz and our modulation are being blended. So we've still got that fuzzy tone, or boosted tone, and then we've got that ever so slight bit of modulation. So then if we take that and we make it completely wet, we're just going to hear our rotary and our flanger. Okay, so if we go to the wet dry that's connecting our rotary and flanger together, we can choose how much of each effect we want. So if we go all the way wet, we're going to get just the flanger and no rotary. And if we go all the way dry, we're just going to get the rotary and no flanger. So I'm going to go somewhere in the middle just for now, and I'm going to take the rotary up to fast speeds, which if you don't know what a rotary is, it's essentially like an amplifier with a speaker that spins around to give it this swirly sound, and so you can go fast or slow to get different tones. Okay. So we want to be able to turn these effects off. We don't want them on all the time. Thinking for our fuzz, you're just going to hold down the bit mangle and hit A, and hold down the low pass filter and hit A. And now those two are connected to A, and you can turn them on and off just by hitting foot switch A. We're going to connect the rotary and flanger to D, which you access by hitting A and B at the same time. And so now we can turn those off by what? It's weird. Okay, you can turn those off by hitting foot switch D. And this kind of leads to one of the benefits of using this to recreate other pedals is, yeah, you're not going to get exactly right. It's not going to make a perfect, flawless copy of this pedal, but it's going to have different strengths, and it's going to be unique, and it's going to be really customizable. And so the way that this pedal is going to end up unique is, whereas on the Keeley Dark Side you have to choose between 3 different modulation options, on this one we can have all of them at the same time. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so next we're going to go to our the delay section. And we're just going to put 2 standard delays. You could do more delays if you wanted to. I think on the Keeley Dark Side, I think it's a 4 head tape delay, which essentially means you have like sort of 4 independent delay taps. We're just going to do 2. I don't know, 4 seems like a lot. But by all means, go for 4 if you want 4. We're going to do another wet dry. If you can't tell, the wet dry is one of the most useful things you're going to use on the Beebo. So we'll run this original wet dry into the dry, and then we're going to run both delays into the wet in parallel, which means they're not running through each other, but rather they're running side by side, which means they're going to operate sort of independently from one another, which is good. Then we're going to go to our controls, go to F, and we're going to add foot switch B as a tap tempo. So you can just connect the BPM to both of these, and that's a tap tempo now. And then we want to be able to turn our delay off, so we're going to connect that to C. When you connect anything to C, or any module to C to turn it off on the Beebo, you do lose the ability to bypass the whole pedal just by pressing C. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. If you plan on putting this in a pedal chain and you need to turn it off for, like, I don't know, a song in your live set or whatever, that's just something you have to keep in mind. Okay, so we're gonna go to our delay. We're not going to mess with it too much because you can alter it when you're playing it later. But we do want to turn it to beats per minute. And I'm going to add just a little bit of filtering, which is the tone knob. And that's just so the delay doesn't pick up little scrapes and bumps and stuff. And then you can set the time for your delay right here. So we can have, we'll just do that. We'll have a quarter note and an eighth note. And then we set our tap tempo, and then it's not connected to the output, so we won't hear anything. So now it's connected. We're going to make the level for the delays all the way to, and then we'll just control the wet and dry from the slider. Yeah, and then if we set this to like a dotted eighth note or something that's going to be out of sync, we get those kind of polyrhythmic sort of delay textures. Let's turn off our Rotary and Flanger so it's just a little cleaner. Make that tap really slow. So let's turn off our delay, so we're back to just this. I am clipping a little bit, so we can turn the level down from our mixers, which is nice. And that's an important part of making a patch on Beebo, is getting the levels right while you make the patch, so that way you don't have to mess with the levels like mid-performance or something. That's definitely something you want to get ironed out ahead of time. Alright, so we're going to make some space here because this section is going to take up the most space. So we'll get all of that out of the way, move that out of the top. Now we have this nice little work area that we can work on here. So our last two effects in the modulation section that we have to get are the phaser and the Univibe. So the phaser is easy. We'll just go to Effect and go to P, and then we've got a phaser already ready to go. I bet you already guessed that we need another wet dry. So we're going to run from our filter to our phaser to our wet dry to this wet dry, and then we've got a phaser. We can make it fully wet in the phaser too because we have an external wet dry. Make it a little faster. Just give it a lot of feedback. Okay, so that's the easy part. Now the other effect that we have to deal with is a Univibe. And there's not a Univibe already built as a module in here. So we're gonna have to construct a Univibe essentially from scratch. So when you're making an effect like that from scratch, one thing you can do is just Google, how does this effect work? And you'll get a litany of explanations ranging from simple to just the outright circuit diagrams. And then you can kind of just, I don't know, just workshop, mess around, and get a tone that sounds about right. On screen now should be the circuit diagrams for an original Univibe. And I don't know about you, but I don't know what that says. I cannot read that at all. So I found a couple other simple explanations of what a Univibe is, and my understanding is it's essentially filters with a lot of resonance with an LFO moving them around. So we're going to try to get close to that. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll make something sound good. I'm going to use this Uberheim filter. I'm going to use 2 of these, and then I'm going to use a cord low pass filter also. And then we need, this is why making space and organizing is very important. And so then we need an LFO. And then I also used an attenuator, which is gonna help us be a little bit more precise with our control of our LFO. So you can run your, you could run the LFO into A or B, doesn't really matter. And then we'll connect that to the cutoff of all of these different filters. Okay, and then these are all gonna be in parallel as well, just like with our delays. So I'm gonna use the bandpass filter from the Oberheim filter. I'm gonna use the low pass filter, and then we've got the cord low pass filter. So this is the bandpass. We're just gonna go kind of more or less in the middle of where guitar frequencies live, more or less. Crank up the resonance. Low pass, I'm gonna go pretty low with this low pass. Crank up the resonance of that one. And then this low pass, crank up the resonance, and then also take it fairly low. But we're not gonna go all the way to the bottom of that one, so we'll go about 100. So then let's just go in the mix completely dry. So we're just listening to our Univibe and not to the phaser. Yeah, so let's see how this sounds. It doesn't really sound like anything. I don't know what I did. All right, we have to set up our attenuator. And again, with all of this, you can adjust just to taste. I mean, you can adjust tempo, you can adjust filter depth, you can adjust resonance and feedback and everything like that. Yeah, we're gonna assign all of this to E, and then we're just gonna kind of clump this together so we know that this is organized as one effect. We know that these are all one effect. We know that this is one effect. So everything's more or less compartmentalized. So we know what it all does. So let's turn everything back on, turn our delay and our tap tempo, and then we've got something like this. Let's take that rotary speed down to slow. We'll make the horn fast and then the drum slow and mix it more towards the flanger. And I mean, you know, just play around with what you've got here. Yeah, a pretty dry mix on the delay. Just like last time, I'll have a link to download a more refined version of this patch, one that I didn't make, you know, live in front of a camera. You can download that for free. I've got a Patreon down below. Go over there, support me. You don't have to, but I'd really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, do all that. Yeah, and then I'm just gonna jam around with this a little bit. Feel free to stick around or not. But yeah, thanks for stopping by.